Powers and roots. Roots are like the opposite of powers. So consider 5 squared equals 25. 5 squared actually represents it's a symbol to represent 5 times 5. So 5 squared is equal to 5 times 5 is equal to 25. So what we say is that 25 is the square of 5, or to say that in the opposite direction, we could say that 5 is the square root of 25. We write roots with this symbol here, which is called a radical. So in the case of a square root, so if x is x squared, and the square root of x written here is just that, the square root of x, we don't actually write the 2 in the spot of this index. So for x cubed, let's take a look at an example of that. So x to the power of 3 we say is x cubed. And this symbol here to represent the opposite of x cubed with 3 in the index of the radical is the cubed root of x. X to the power of 4 is just x to the 4th, we say that, and for every other power past that, we'd say x to the 5th or x to the 17th or x to the nth. And it's following a similar pattern with root. So we just call this the 4th root of x, or for any other root, we would call it the nth root. So the 27th root or the 31st root of some number or some variable. So squares and square roots. As we said previously, a square just represents repeated multiplication. So 5 squared is just 5 times 5, which is equal to 25. If we have negative 5 squared, it's repeated multiplication of whatever is inside that square root, which means in this case, it's negative 5 repeatedly multiplied by itself, which would mean we have negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25. So both 5 squared is equal to 25 and negative 5 squared is 25. Now if 5 squared is 25 and the square root is just the opposite, well then the square root of 25 is 5. It tells us basically a square root is what number times itself gives 25. That's what the square root function does. So we can ask ourselves then, what is the square root of negative 25? And the answer is none. There is no answer, because no number multiplied by itself gets us a negative number. You can't have the square root of a negative. Our only options are 5 and 25, or sorry, 5 squared is 25, and the other option would be negative 5 squared. But as we saw, both of these give positive values when you square them. So there is no square root of a negative number. Let's follow the same process for cubes and cube roots. So 3 to the power of 3, or 3 cubed, that would just be 3 times itself 3 times. And 3 times 3 times 3 is equal to 27. Similarly, if we did negative 3 cubed, we'd get negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Well, now here we actually see something interesting happen with the signs, which is that negative 3 times negative 3 is equal to positive 9. And then you have times negative 3. So positive 9 times negative 3 is actually equal to negative 27. So two of those negative signs turn into a positive, but the third negative sign, the odd one out, remains. So when you have a negative number cubed, it remains negative. So the cubed root of 27, which would be the opposite of the cube of opposite of the cubed root of 27 is 3. Because we're saying what number times itself 3 times equals 27. Well, following this same logic for the cubed root of negative 27, well, actually, this time we have an answer. The cubed root of negative 27 is negative 3. For the reason that we saw above, 3 times itself 3 times, sorry, negative 3 times itself 3 times gets us negative 27. So the cubed root of a negative number actually has an answer. Following the same process for fourth roots, this would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 4 times. And 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16. So just doing it in my head like that. 4 times 4 is 16. And we can do the same thing for the negative one. And if we do that same thing, we get positive 4 times positive 4, which gets us, again, positive 16. So what would the fourth root of 16 be? It would be equal to 2. And what would the fourth root of negative 16 be? There is none. In these cases, you can either write none, or you could write NA for non-applicable, or you could write this symbol. Some students are comfortable with that symbol. It means that it doesn't mean 0, it means nothing. It means there is no solution to that problem. So whichever way you're comfortable of writing it. So did you notice the pattern? Even powers always give positive results. So for example, we had 2 squared. 2 squared is equal to 4, and negative 3 to the power of 4 would be equal to negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 would give us positive 81. And one of the results of this is that you can't take the even root of a negative number. So the square root of negative 16, that's a no-go. Let's go with the sixth root of negative 125. That's also a no-go. You can't take the even root of a negative number, because any negative number, or I should say any number multiplied by itself an even number of times gets you a positive value. So with that, odd numbers of positive numbers are always positive. For example, if we did 3 to the power of 3, we saw was positive 27. And odd powers of negative numbers are negative, and the example would be negative 3 cubed is going to be equal to negative 27, because you'll have that odd negative sign not turning into a positive with another negative sign. You can also take an odd root of a positive or negative number. So you can do the cubed root of negative 27. That's fine. That's equal to negative 3. Just like you can do the cubed root of positive 125, that's equal to positive 5. Positive 5 times itself 3 times is 125. So in this unit, you're going to have to be comfortable with squares, cubes, and other powers, but really what you need to have just quick and available to your memory is perfect squares up to 12 squared. So that's just your standard times table up to the 12 timeses. You need to be ready for what's 7 times 7, 7 squared. What's 8 squared and 4 squared. And you should also have some of the perfect cubes memorized, but really only up to about 5 cubed. That's all we expect. So 1 cubed, 2 cubed, 3 cubed, 4 cubed, 5 cubed. If you have your standard squares and those first few cubes, then you should be ready for anything. And you can use your calculator for anything else. And if you're ever in doubt, you can use your calculator to check the ones that we sort of expect you to know, but being comfortable with them is a big part of being quick and efficient at solving the problems in this unit.